You have found the Open Eclectic podcast, where Nate and Josh talk about everything from mobile games to books to pet peeves to cars to toys. Our interests run eclectic and we're open to more. Welcome to the Open Eclectic.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to a very special edition of the Open Eclectic. With us tonight is one of our super fans, Andy, and we are going to be talking about Batman. So, should we just jump right into it? Because I know Josh and Andy are both huge Batman aficionados, and I am really, I guess what you call kind of a more of a, maybe a step above a casual. Like, I'm not just some like girl at the mall. It's like, oh yeah, I've heard of Batman. Yeah, that's cool. Doesn't he wear like a red cape or something? I mean, they've probably seen,
Do mall girls like Batman?
My little brother likes Batman. Anyway, I digress. So, kind of.
There you go.
You're probably more of a Batman fan than you realize. You just gotta kind of dig back into your childhood a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean, long-stored memories.
I could probably talk with you guys for a little bit, and I did a little bit of homework in kind of the week, in the couple weeks leading up to this after we started talking about it. I guess kind of what the impetus or the what kind of got this whole idea going was Josh and I had talked a little bit about Batman a while ago in one of our episodes, and I was pleasantly surprised, Andy, that you were listening to it, and you're like, you guys didn't talk about Batman nearly enough. Now, to our credit, it wasn't like, I guess it was a comic. It was supposed to be about comic books. So, but we didn't really get too deep and really into anything. And we talked a little bit about Batman, but especially after the Batman has come out with the dreamy Robert Pattinson and the what's her name? Dang it, Kravitz. Zoe Kravitz.
Zoe Kravitz.
As the beautiful Catwoman. We decided that we needed to have a proper Batman episode, and it would be awesome to have Andy on to give us more insight than we have currently. So I don't know. I guess where do you guys want to start? I mean, we've all seen the movie. Josh and I, we've seen it twice. Andy, how many times have you seen the new one?
I saw it twice as well. Once at theater and once when it was released on HBO.
All right.
So yeah, I think this is the official spoiler warning. I think usually when we review a movie, we kind of do a non-spoiler and then we do spoilers. But I think
this whole thing.
It's been 7 weeks.
Yeah, this whole thing's going to be a spoiler. So we're assuming that you're listening that you've seen it. You've seen the Batman and anything else that we're discussing. So don't expect to not be spoiled, I guess.
I think there's a lot of things where it's like, if you expect like if we venture into Dark Knight Returns or something like that, I mean, that came out in the 80s. I think I feel safe in saying, well, sorry.
Yeah, talking about like, any of the Batman in the past, anything before this is just open season. I mean, it's all open season, but especially that stuff. So,
to quote my favorite Alfred moment from the comics, real quick. The what do you say? The greenhouse is loaded, and I'm a dead shot.
The greenhouse is loaded?
Yeah, it was a shotgun.
Oh.
Alfred was threatening Bane with a shotgun. It was great.
That was in Nightfall, I'm guessing you're talking about.
Yeah, it was.
Nice. See? I had no idea what you're talking about. You're like, Alfred.
That's okay.
Look, I have the
shotgun.
book.
Yeah.
I got the book right there. The novel adaptation by Dennis O'Neil, one of the best Batman comic book writers from the 70s.
And that book is great, actually. I have it on my shelf too. You can't see it, but it's over there.
I don't have any. You can't see anything back here.
No, it's fine.
I have one collection. I have the Long Halloween. That's like the one Batman collection that I have. but it's been like 15 years since I've read it. So,
You haven't read it in the last couple of weeks?
No, I didn't do a lot of homework. I watched Year One, and now I always screw this up between the movie and the comic, the Return of the Dark Knight, or Dark Knight
Returns.
See, I always get it wrong. Part 1 and 2. So, okay, Andy, I was telling Josh this. So with Year One, I felt it was kind of like, especially when I saw Batman, Bruce Wayne, when he came back home, he punched through a stack of bricks, and then he roundhouse kicks a tree over, and I'm like, come on, dude. I'm like, you're not Superman. What the heck is going? What is this? How can he knock a tree over and bust through bricks without destroying his body?
I mean, not to sound like a super nerd, but you underestimate the training of Lady Shiva. She's
okay, all right.
The world's foremost martial artist / assassin. She would have given him plenty of training one-on-one on how to shatter a tree with his foot, into splinters.
So that's the explanation for knocking the tree over. I mean,
yeah, it's of course it's crazy. The tree could have had a little bit of dry rot.
Sure, yeah.
Had a little bit of termite infestation.
He picked the one that was just barely hanging on. He's like, I bet I could kick that over.
He needed a confidence boost as he's starting out his career as the Caped Crusader.
And also at the very end, when him and Gordon go over the bridge with the baby, and then they just just land on the ground like nothing happened. The criminal is on the ground and dead or whatever, but Batman and Gordon are just yep, we're good. Here's your child. Okay, here you go.
Well, you got to learn how to fall and catch yourself with your
But
weight.
it was super far down.
It's mathematical.
Wow. I had a little difficulty with the suspension of disbelief on that one.
It was the Kevlar suit padded the fall for him.
But what did Gordon have? I guess Gordon landed on the fat criminal guy, on the gangster guy. But the baby...
Everybody knows that, that's the way to land, is on somebody else.
Yeah, okay. All right, okay. So that was I watched that, and I watched... I'm going to get it wrong. Return of the Dark Knight? Dark Knight Returns?
The Dark Knight Returns.
Parts 1 and 2. So part 1 was really cool, but part 2 was just balls to the wall, just like Michael Bay level. Man. Awesome. The Joker's just pew, 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 just killing people. He's got a bat, whatever, a bat blade thing sticking out of his eye, and he's just ha ha ha, and it's just, yeah, that was awesome. And the voice of Batman, Peter Weller, which was he was RoboCop, right? Back in the OG, the original RoboCop movie. I think he was.
Yeah, I think so.
But take your word for it.
Yeah. It was Peter Weller, and I'm cool, because when he first started talking, and I was man, this is an interesting Batman voice, because it's the old 55-year-old Batman. I'm just oh yeah, I like it. I really like it. That one was great. I like that one a lot.
So Andy, Nate and I talked about this the other night, off air. So I do want to know, when you read a Batman comic or book, whose voice is it?
It's usually Kevin Conroy's voice.
Okay, all right, we're on the same page here. Perfect.
What about you?
Oh, 100%. Kevin Conroy.
Yeah, it's got to be Kevin Conroy. That's, aside from what really got me into Batman when I was a kid, and my older brother, he let us watch the Michael Keaton '89 original Batman movie. And as a little kid, I was just wow, that blew my mind, because up until that point, I'd only seen the '60s, cheesy Adam West series, and that's not Batman, So the combination of that movie, and then when the Batman movie from '89 basically kickstarted the adaptation of the animated series. I believe Warner Brothers at that time had just gotten off the ground with Looney Tunes, and one of the not cast members, but one of the writers or producers of Looney Tunes was Bruce Timm, and he was one of the main producers for the animated series, and he was a huge Batman fan, and he brought on Paul Dini, and between the two of them, Batman the Animated Series just for me was Batman, and it ran for 4 or 5 years, and it splintered off into different series with Superman, and then with the League and everything. But Kevin Conroy as Batman, you had Mark Hamill as the Joker, and I remember the very first episode with Man-Bat and just thinking, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And when they brought in Mr. Freeze and they brought in Clayface, they brought a lot of characters and a lot of villains in. Since I wasn't that familiar with the comics yet, I was only familiar with the 60s show, really brought me into, that world. And for me, and I'm sure for you guys to a certain extent, especially you, Josh, I mean, Batman hands down has the best villains of any superhero, I think, across any, whether it's DC or Marvel or whatever. Most recognizable, everybody knows the Joker, everybody knows Catwoman, everybody knows Penguin, Two-Face. I could go on and on and on. And the animated series really brought that alive in a sense for me, and was actually responsible for spawning new characters. Bruce Timm invented the Harley Quinn character.
Josh was just telling me about that.
Thanks to him, we have Harley Quinn, yeah.
Well, okay.
And now she's got her own movies, and now she's in series with other rogues. So it's very cool, like everything that the animated series did for Batman. Like the movie definitely kickstarted Batman and kind of saved the superhero movie genre in general, but the animated series sent it into overdrive, and like he is popular today for me, and I'm sure many other people, because of that series.
And so Kevin Conroy, of course, he's the voice of Batman in the animated series.
And in the Arkham Knight games.
I was going to say in the video games, and Mark Hamill also, he voiced the Joker at least in the Arkham Asylum. Or did he do all of them?
In all of them.
Okay.
He was in all of them, yeah.
Which that's really cool too. I played through, again, like, I dabble, so I have a little bit here and there. So I played Arkham Asylum, that was a great game. So Andy, I was talking to Josh about this the other day, and it kind of goes along with the Harley Quinn thing a little bit, kind of related. And it's like, why don't they make like a big movie with a villain that is not the Joker, or they don't even like, I mean, I know we just had the Riddler, but it's like, why don't they like, it feels like it's always Batman and Joker. And I know that like Joker's the nemesis, is Batman's nemesis, but it's like, can't we like explore something else? Like there was that, I think I sent you that link for that how it should have ended, or how that animated thing. I don't know if you watched that, where at the end, like Batman was like, yeah, so then the next movie I think we should do like Joker, and Superman's like, no, dude, every single time you've done the Joker so many times. So I'm like, I agree with that. They should do somebody else. I don't know. I think it
has to do with the iconography of the Joker, though. Like, he's so over the top in like every way possible, depending on how you want to play it. From like Cesar Romero's ridiculous Joker in the 60s, where he like refused to shave his mustache, so they just put the makeup over it. Or like Jack Nicholson's like frozen smile and his like just dead-eyed, like, the crazy face to Heath Ledger. They're just, I haven't seen the Walking Phoenix one, or
I haven't seen that one either.
But everybody kind of went gaga for that too, and he definitely did his own thing. And then in the comics too, it's just that kind of balance to the Batman. So I think that's why you like have somebody who's
like a yin and yang
physically
kind of thing?
Dark. Yeah, he's physically dark, but he's trying to bring hope and like and good to Gotham. And then you have somebody who's physically bright, who is a very dark presence. So it just kind of, I think it's because of that, they instantly complement each other.
I get it. I'm like, I mean, I know we got a little bit of that, because, I mean, we've seen other villains in the movies, like Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy and the Riddler twice now.
Don't talk about Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy.
No?
Batman and Robin, that was pretty bad. The George Clooney flick.
I know. It was bad. It was bad. We had nipples in the bat suit.
I submit. I'm firmly in the camp that was a good movie. I liked the '60s camp. Like, it's not for everybody. Don't get me wrong.
Wasn't there like bang and pow? Like, didn't they actually have? Or am I just?
Why? It was pretty close though.
Because it was really
that movie really
comical.
Upset me though, because again, like, I'm coming from reading Nightfall, and Bane in Nightfall is not some idiot grunting, steroid freak like he's portrayed in Batman and Robin.
Oh, he was in Batman and Robin? See,
he was Poison Ivy's, like,
henchman.
Number one henchman.
Wow, I didn't even remember.
But he just grunts. He just grunts in the movie.
Yeah, that is pretty bad. And so that's what I saw first. And then when I read Nightfall, I was like, ooh, see, I like this better. I like that he's an intelligent, methodical kind of.
I did read Nightfall, and it was because Andy loaned it to me back in high school, and that was the last time I read it. So I should probably read it again. And I really enjoyed it when I read it. I was like, man, this is like it's a novel. So I'm just like, wow, this is really cool.
Well, in the Batman, they do a different villain at least, though. They could have started with the Joker. And I kind of they
still put him in at the end.
Yeah. I think it just shows that, this isn't Batman Begins. I like that we're not getting like a day one origin story. Yeah. Like, we didn't start with like little Bruce or anything like that, or him being, not Batman yet. Like, we start right away.
He's been Batman for 2 years, right? It had been 2 years.
I think he's on year 2, 2.5, something like that. And I love that it's just like, let's start here.
Here's a question for you, Nate. If you don't want to see Joker again, like, what villain would you like them to, for the next movie that they haven't really focused on yet? Because there is quite a few that they haven't really touched on.
See, this is going to show my ignorance of the material, because all the villains that I'm aware of have kind of made appearances already. Like, I'm trying to think
So for me, like, I'm thinking since this Batman movie that just came out, it had that very heavy. It had like a 70s dark grit to it, but it also had that 40s like film noir kind of aspect to it. Mm-hmm. And it's gritty, right? Like, the Riddler is not in a green suit with purple question marks.
Yeah, he's just
like kind of terrifying.
He's not like his appearance like a showman or whatever.
When he first appears in the dark, in that very first scene when he's in the room with the mayor, you're like, oh my gosh, it kind of feels like that movie Seven. It's really dark and gritty feel.
When you first
Fincher feel.
When you first see that, I almost thought it was Batman at first, because I'm like, who the hell is that? And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's not Batman.
So I was thinking, sorry to cut you off, but going off of that 70s vibe and that 40s film noir vibe, it'd be kind of cool to bring in a character that's lesser known and maybe not focus the entire movie around him, but somebody like Mr. Zsasz, who is like a cold-blooded killer psychopath.
Isn't his name? Is it Victor Zsasz? Is that his name?
Yeah, it's Victor Zsasz.
Hey, way to go, Nate.
I don't know where that came from. I
told you it's in there.
Is he like so he's like a serial killer? Is that?
And he's a serial killer that every time he takes a victim's life, he he cuts his skin, so he's got like all these scars to represent every killer.
See, that would be really cool, because I think that would lend itself really well to like the kind of the detective mystery vibe that was in this movie. Like, because they're looking for clues and solving riddles, and so I think trying to hunt down a serial killer would be pretty sweet.
What's the name of the gang? It's escaping me. Where they're all like, they're all themed after cards. Is that the? You know what I'm talking about, Andy? That's who I want to see in the next one.
Okay.
Because then
what storyline?
Because they're thieves, they're like generational thieves where like the head of the gang is the king and then the queen, Jack and the 10 depending, or sometimes there's an ace depending on how it goes. But like so like the first one was kind of murder and corruption, and then so the next one could still be detective focused, but it could be like, you know, they're highly sophisticated bank robbers, or maybe they're robbing secrets, or, you know, whatever, because that's what they do. And then like when the king has enough, he retires, and then they all move up a notch, you know, and then they find a new person, and so like this gang continues indefinitely. And so I think that could be like a really cool detective based thing that I think would work in the Matt Reeves world.
You know, and that just made me think of, I was just telling Nate about this today or yesterday. I was watching the DC animated movie Batman vs. Robin. Have you seen that one? Well, it's in the comic book too. They borrowed it. It's called the Court of Owls series.
Yes.
And the Court of Owls is like a secret society in Gotham with like the elites in charge, and there's a lot of that kind of talk, you know, these days with all the political stuff and government stuff and powerful people that are controlling everything, you know. That'd be really interesting to see something incorporated like that into a movie too. And it keeps, like, I like this stuff because it keeps it more firmly grounded in reality, and it's not so fantastical, which most of his villains are, with, you know, Clayface and Maybe Man-Bat. Some of those guys.
Right.
But yeah, so
I would...
Go
ahead, Nate.
I was just going to say, I looked up, like, Batman villains, just so I could see if there's ones, like, I hadn't heard of at all. And Screen Rant has the 20 greatest Batman villains of all time, and the first one they list is Deadshot. But we've seen him in Suicide Squad, which, you know, but I guess. Did you guys see Suicide Squad?
I didn't.
No.
No. I saw the reviews and I was like,
yeah, it was. I mean, they had a lot of characters in there too, but it was just kind of like,
I don't like it when they stuff like you know, a huge amount of characters. Like, just
Deadshot was in there, and then like there was one I was thinking of, Andy, when you asked me who would I want to see, and I like Killer Croc was in there, and I'm like, well, that would be kind of cool, but I was thinking, is like, well, we saw that Killer Croc in Suicide Squad, but I mean, again, I don't know that anyone would be like, well, we've already seen Killer Croc in a film. It was the definitive Killer Croc portrayal in Suicide Squad. Although I've heard, what's the second? Is Birds of Prey the second Suicide Squad movie, or is that a totally different one? And I've heard that one is actually pretty decent.
Well, the Birds of Prey, yeah, it would have included Batgirl, Huntress, some of the lesser known. Black Canary, I think, is another female member of the extended Bat family. But there was a show on the WB called Birds of Prey back in the early 2000s, back when we were still in high school, I think. Only lasted for a season or two.
Yeah, it was like 2 seasons, and it was, Oracle was kind of the main central character in that, and it was like Batman had disappeared from Gotham, and so they were trying to hold the fort down, not knowing if he was going to come back, and it was considering it was a WB show, it was all right. And considering I was in high school, it was all right.
Oh. Probably had a pretty dark angel feel to it, that little Jessica Alba show.
A little bit, yeah.
Andy, you were so into that show. I never watched it.
Oh, I love that show. Yeah, Oracle, Nate, by the way, in case you're not tracking. Sorry, Oracle? Do you know who Oracle is? Josh mentioned a second ago.
No. Wait. That's Gordon's daughter, right? Isn't it?
Very good.
Or am I totally off?
Very good.
Like, because she was Batgirl, and then she gets paralyzed, and so she becomes Oracle, right?
Because the Joker shoots her in the spine.
So I don't remember. Okay, so there was was it the Under the Red Hood? Is that one that talks about, like, does that deal with what happens to her, or is that just like the Joker? Am I getting that, like?
It depends on which line you follow. I'd say the Killing Joke, right, is the big one that kind of, yeah, that one. It's right there. Look at that. Yeah, the Killing Joke deals with her getting shot. That's also a very dark.
Such a great cover, by the way.
Yeah.
And the DC animated movie is fantastic.
It's true. It is. It's one of the better ones.
So many things.
I will steer everyone away from Batman Ninja.
Never heard of it.
It was pretty terrible. Don't bother with it.
Batman Ninja?
There's about 500 that would be a better use of your time.
Well, I know what I'm going to watch.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the Batman versus Robin and the other one, Batman and Son. Whenever Damian Wayne is introduced, that DC animated movie too, which
he has a
son. The whole DC animated movie collection that they've brought out over the past 12 to 15 years, man, those are really strong Batman movies. And that's something that you will never get from a live-action Batman movie, is you get to see, even though it's animated, but you see how the writers in the comic books really envision him being like this really badass martial artist and super intelligent detective. You get that with all the gadgets and everything. It does get a little fantastical with some of the things he's able to survive, but some of those movies are awesome, really, really good.
Well, I think talking about surviving
a place on any.
Yeah, well, yeah, like you're saying about the writers, like they have so much more space and time to be able to flesh these characters out in whatever direction they want, and they're not constrained by a studio and actors and all that garbage. Necessary and not always garbage. No, that's a little harsh, not garbage. But
sometimes
being able to make the comics, okay, what was I gonna say? Now I forgot. Lost my train of thought.
Well, I think you have opportunity with those animated movies that you don't in the live action, though, because it's easier to have that suspension of belief.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's like, and again, it's still, you're still creating, a movie, but it's animated and stuff. But it's not like, I'm sure they can make those a bit faster than a feature, like a big budget blockbuster movie, and they're still high quality, which, Andy, you said something about Batman being able to survive like injuries or whatever. Like in that Return of the Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight Returns.
Dark Knight Returns.
In the second part, when he has been shot by Joker like multiple times, and he's like on top of the police SWAT van, and he's just like, he got shot in the gut, and he's just got like blood just like pouring out of him. I mean, the fact that he didn't like pass out and just die, and then the new Robin takes him back to the Batcave, and Alfred's just like, fix him up, okay, he's good. And this dude's 55 years old, and he's just like, okay, I'm good. A nuke went off. Damn. I don't know if that...
Well, 55 is the new 35.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think in that comic, they and that movie, though, they do kind of explain it as much as you're ever going to get.
And again, I mean, I understand that it's a comic book, and it's not reality. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
But he's like, when he's all gets beat up the first time, and he's all like stripping down, which I thought was weird in front of the child, but that's another topic. And then she's like, where's he going? And Alfred's like, to find his strength.
Yes.
And it's like, so yeah, it was just like about brute willpower that's apparently kept him alive.
I almost wanted to kind of laugh when Alfred said that. He's like, he's going to get his strength. And this, half naked Batman's just walking into a cave and like talking to a bat. Is that like his dad, or just the spirit of bats, or fear, or what is it? What is that? Who is he talking to in the cave?
It's whoever you think it is.
Is that just open for the viewer to decide? Like, just open for interpretation?
I think so.
I mean, it was kind of cool, and I did. So there seems to be a theme of like bats like crashing through windows in in this stuff, which that is also a very like dramatic thing where he's like, I'm ready. Suddenly I was like, damn it, I gotta replace a window again. Crap.
Well, it's that concept of like rebirth.
Okay. All right.
So Nate, I have a question. So the suspension of disbelief for you was broken in year one when he's like kicking the bricks in the tree. Okay, like I can see that.
Okay,
definitely.
I won't say it's broken.
But like,
it's bent. Like it's like.
But was it broken for you in the Batman when he's taking all that gunfire and just kind of keeps going?
See, I just figured he just had like this awesome Kevlar, just bulletproof. I mean, he's getting bruised, obviously, because I mean, you got to take that force somehow, right? But
no stray bullets to his mouth.
Well, it's a rule. They never shoot him in the face. So it's always just in the vest region. No,
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think basically untrained people just kind of wildfiring, in my mind, you'd probably aim for the center of mass. I think that would be like a good default thing to shoot at. So I think he's got like a little leeway there. But there was a moment when he's up there fighting against all the Riddler clones, and I was like, well,
one of them had like a shotgun, right? Like, why didn't he just point at his face? Okay.
Well, and then he did when he was hanging down. The guy was like getting real careful and like bracing.
But then he did like the whole like movie villain trope thing where he just like waited too long, and they're usually like.
And he got me monologuing.
Yeah. Maybe it's just because I'm not as used to watching, like animated shows or animated movies as much, because they do, have a little bit of a different vibe to them than film, I guess. I don't know.
For sure.
I don't know if that seems like elitist because I'm the furthest thing from that, but it's just it's a different experience, a little bit of a different experience, I guess. So I gotta kind of factor that in.
Yeah. Any negative comments about the Batman from either of you?
I want to hear what Andy says.
Same. That's what I meant from either of you. I meant from Andy.
Yeah. I've been talking enough. We need to have Andy talk more here.
So, I mean, there was a couple nitpicky things. I thought overall it was the best Batman movie, live action, after The Dark Knight. So, for Bruce Wayne just starting out as Batman, the movie was just all about Batman and really not at all about Bruce Wayne. Because even when Bruce Wayne was on screen, it was still Batman, but without the mask. So for me, he was a little bit too emo with kind of like the hair in his face and just always in a really sour mood all the time. Like I wanted to, I like Playboy Bruce.
Yeah.
And that is the mask that is Batman's real identity, is that Playboy Bruce.
He was real like a petulant child kind of to Alfred, just kind of like a little bit, a whiny little punk.
Yeah. Yeah, the way he talked to Alfred, if I were Alfred, I would have given him a little backhand. Yeah. So that was kind of a nitpicky thing for me. I appreciated that there wasn't really too many political messages in the movie for the most part. It was a Batman movie. It was kind of funny that all of the evil people in the movie, all the bad people were white men, and then the saviors or the good people were people of color. So, I mean, it's not that I'm looking for those things, but I just kind of noticed it.
I think all the bad guys being white men is actually fairly because of the tone of like corruption, people in power being corrupted and that sort of thing. I was like, that didn't feel out of place to me. It was like all the saviors except Batman. Like that, I did kind of pick up on that vibe a little bit, but also I agree that I was kind of like, I don't know that I care enough.
Yeah, it didn't take away anything from the movie.
No.
I
I had no issues with. I did hear people complain about the race of Catwoman, and I had no problems with that either, personally.
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, we already had a black Catwoman. We had Halle Berry. I mean, that wasn't a great Catwoman, but...
So,
we don't talk about Halle.
So, Josh and I were just talking about that the other night. I have never seen Catwoman, and I know it's like derided as like one of the most terrible movies like ever. Have you seen it?
I haven't. I never bothered to see it.
Yeah, because it was like...
It goes to show that, with very few exceptions, people don't respond well to villain-based DC movies. It doesn't work. With the exception of the Joker, which everybody seemed to like. I still haven't seen it.
I haven't either. I need to see
like
that.
All the other ones were like, at best, split on what people thought about them.
Well, what other ones what have there been? Like villain-focused ones?
Catwoman, Suicide Squad, Joker, Suicide Squad 2? Peacemaker.
Yeah.
Peacemaker?
Which...
And there was a Harley Quinn movie too.
Right, and all of them were like, except for the Joker, were kind of bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. One more thing going back to the Batman, though. It was kind of a cliche there at the end, right after he's been focused on taking out the Riddler and solving this case, and he's gotten done pounding through all of the Riddler clones or wannabes or whatever. This is kind of a cliche. They do this in a ton of movies, but when he's hanging there on that electrical cable and he realizes that if the cable hits the water, it's going to, electrocute all the people down there. And so he kind of like shifts his focus from beating up bad guys to being a savior of the people, kind of like that Christ-like figure. So he cuts the cable, falls into the water, is baptized in the water, comes back up into the water, and now he's reborn as like the man of the people, and he's guiding them from underneath this wreckage where it doesn't look like they're in serious danger, but he's pushing the wreckage off of them, and he's guiding them through the water, and he's getting them on the helicopter.
Yeah.
Now
it felt a little heavy-handed.
Got his humanity back.
Yeah. It definitely felt a little heavy-handed to me too. Both times I watched it, I was like, maybe it was just my like gut reaction, but then the second time I was like, nah, I think that was a choice for sure. But at the same time, I do like that the movie in general, although it was like, him running around trying to, figure out what's going on with the Riddler and stuff, I liked that it was kind of also about character development without saying, here's the character development, and like handing it to you. We shift from the beginning of the movie, I'm vengeance, to the end of the movie where like people are trusting him and like don't want to let him go. Like they're like, no, you got to stay with me. And he's like, you've got to let go and get up in the helicopter or whatever. So personally, I like it did feel a little ham-fisted, but at the same time, I kind of appreciated that it was the concept of like show don't tell. Like we didn't have a line of exposition that said, and then Batman learned to be a symbol of hope. It was you got to watch the transition happen, and I don't know. I think if it had been less ham-fisted, though, it would have been too subtle for too many people.
Speaking of him saying, I'm vengeance, did he actually say that to Catwoman or anybody else? Because they kept calling him vengeance. Well, as far as I can remember, he only said it in the very beginning to those
as far as what I recall, was just saying it at those guys at the very beginning. I'm vengeance.
Well, I think I got the impression that that's what he said to everybody when they were like, who are you? And so that's eventually, I mean, he isn't killing anybody, so people talk. And then this guy was like beating me to a pulp, and I was like, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm vengeance." What is that, man? I think
where it gets around in the underworld.
I think so.
I like that. What you guys are both talking about there with the Christ-like figure and like I hadn't like made that connection, but I did notice there was that shift, like where you said like when he falls in the water and then it's like he's the savior now of these people, pulling them out, for guiding them from under the wreckage, lighting the flare and and they're all following him out, and the thing with the helicopter, Josh, with the person that was, didn't want to let go of him. So it's like he's not this scary vengeful figure. He's this symbol of hope. And I was thinking, kind of as going into the second viewing, I'm like, it's like Batman is like a symbol of just humanity, like trying to be better, or trying to trying to rise above the crud that we live in, and that's that just surrounds us. And I don't know, I like it.
And it depends from the perspective too of like the citizens of Gotham, because you see that bat signal in the sky, and if you're a citizen trying to get by, then it is a symbol of hope, and you feel safer out on the street at night. But if you're one of the thugs, then it's like, oh man,
and
he's out
afraid.
there.
Yeah.
It's like more of like a signal. Yeah, it's a fear thing.
And they did such a good job with that. I loved the intro of the three, you're following these three sets of crooks or whatever, and doing whatever deed, and then pans to the shadows, and you don't know, is it this guy's it that guy's that guy, and they look up and they see it, and then they're looking around going, I really thought the drophead guy was going to go back into the store and give back the money or something. Like, I thought that would have been pretty odd. Maybe in the next movie we can have that
Before he gets hit by the taxi, or
yeah.
So okay, so going back, from this one going back to the Dark Knight, because it's at the end of the Dark Knight where he's like, okay, it's been a while since I've seen it, so it's like Batman is taking, at the end of that, he takes like the blame for the death of Rachel, right?
Of Harvey Dent.
No, of Dent. Well, okay,
right.
Is it Dent? So,
because Dent has just fallen off the building, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but then they're talking about how he's like he's gonna be hunted, and he's gonna be this, but it's like it's like he's a criminal on the run, but he's like a symbol of hope at the same time. Is that what they were going for at the end of that?
He was a scapegoat, and it's like at the end of the movie he was like, "Well, I'll be whatever Gotham needs me to be. They need me to be the bad guy, and then I'm the bad guy."
Oh,
because it was a method of uniting the people like against him, kind of a thing, so that they could.
They didn't want to besmirch Harvey Dent's reputation.
Right.
Yeah,
they wanted him to remain as a symbol. Like, he was the champion, like, of the people, and who was going after the corruption, and they didn't want the people to know that he had been corrupted, right? That he'd been turned into a villain, and everything he'd done was, they didn't want it to just be for nothing. So Batman's like, I'll take that. I'll be the bad guy who killed Harvey Dent. That's right. That's right. That's right.
And I don't know if anybody, well, I don't know if they do this intentionally, but when I see little things like that in the movies, like, it reminds me of things that you see in the comics. So, like, the whole thing with Harvey Dent, like, all these things that happened to him between Rachel dying and his mutilation and all these things. I mean, to me, it reminded me a lot of The Killing Joke and all the things that Joker was trying to do to Gordon to get him to snap. And then you were just talking about at the end of the Batman, the kid clinging to him and not wanting to get in the helicopter. If you read the Hush series, there is a moment in Hush where Batman saves a kid from Croc, and he clings to Batman and he tells the cops that he wants to stay with Batman even though Batman's trying to leave and the cops are trying to get him to safety. I saw a little nods to the comics in the Batman. The Hush thing, I mean, they did have the little Hush headline on the little scribbled on the newspaper, Thought that was kind of interesting.
Oh, I missed that.
Obviously a lot of Year One references.
So in the movie, they actually wrote on the paper, Hush?
They wrote Hush, yeah. And I think even one of the characters they referenced name was Tommy Elliott, which is one of the main characters in the Hush comic book series.
Yeah.
Tommy Elliott is his childhood friend who becomes a surgeon, and He's responsible for saving Batman from a traumatic fall and some a fractured skull. Excuse me. And I think he also does the surgery on Two-Face in one of the storylines to bring his scarred side back to normal.
Yeah, there's so many references in the Batman to so many things that like it got to the point where like on the second viewing I was kind of watching for some of those especially, and I was like, oh, that's a reference, but I was like, I can't. It's almost a little too quick for me to like figure out exactly where some of those came from. One of my favorites was the motorcycle at the end of the movie, and it had like none of his stuff was like overtly or maybe was is exaggerated Batmobile or Batbike, you know, like you got in Adam West or even in the 89 Batmobile.
Well, yeah, 89 was.
But that motorcycle had that like real subtle like ear tips to the front of the bike that I was like, yeah, that definitely looks like it could have been just a repainted Adam West motorcycle, honestly.
Can we talk about
a lot of it was subtle like that? Can
we talk about the Batmobile? Because that was a really awesome Batmobile. I liked it. That whole scene, the whole chase scene was just, it's great. Like the whole, like, and that's, I think, Josh, I think you mentioned, like, you know, seeing it in the theater, like, you get the sound is just really awesome. Like, with that, whatever that jet engine is on the back of the Batmobile, and it's just, you know,
yeah,
it was just great.
They could have ratcheted that sound up just a little more even, and I think that would have been.
Now, if it would have been Chris Nolan who directed it, he probably would have just been like,
yeah.
And that was cool about this Batmobile. Like, even though it had a jet engine on the back, it still felt like it was a little more grounded in reality.
Well, yeah, because
that deep rumble too, like 70s whatever Challenger Charger was based off of.
It was like it was just a 70s like muscle car with this, you know, whatever jet engine just bolted onto the back of it.
It actually reminded me a little bit of Kurt Russell's car in Death Proof.
I have not seen Death Proof.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can fully recommend it. But yeah, he's got a card. He's because he's a stuntman. Like Kurt Russell's character's name is Stuntman Mike, and he's like, yeah, this car is definitely death proof. You got to be sitting in this seat, but it's death proof. And he like rolls and lives and stuff. And I was like, it was a muscle car and stuff. It was super reinforced. I told Nate and our friend, other Open Eclectic superfan Alexa, came to a showing with us, and I was like, yeah, so that I love the Batmobile chase completely, but like in my head I have like my DM's voice going off, where he's like, okay, I'm chasing the Penguin, and you're like, oh bummer, he gets away, and he goes, well, can I like just floor it and see what happens? So give me a roll. Critical success. All right, you ramp over the trucks and you come through the flyers and like. And I kind of like that that sometimes, you know, I think it bolsters the story that sometimes Batman just gets lucky. Like you couldn't really plan for that. You just looked around and saw an opportunity, and it happened to be there, and he hit it. And it worked out well, mostly.
So Batman just works really well under pressure. Like, he's really good at making, like, snap decisions. Now, is there many examples of, like, Batman, like, failing? Like, you know, like, screwing something up, or you know, or, like, you know, is there? Because, I mean, feels like most of the time he's successful.
So if you remember reading Dark Knight, Nightfall, his greatest failures are just people that he didn't get to in time to save.
Okay.
For example, the night that he's going to the all-girls school, that Zsasz has them captive, and he's killing girls waiting for Batman to show. And when he gets there, he realizes that there's already been a few deaths because he wasn't fast enough to get there. And so he's, you know, anytime somebody dies, he's hard on himself that he wasn't fast enough, that he wasn't strong enough, that he wasn't clever enough to have prevented their death.
Well, and then, like...
Go ahead. I mean, as far as like messing up because somebody outsmarts him, like I know there are. I'm just having trouble. Thinking of
like
some
Bane,
examples.
Bane defeats him, right? I mean, that's a failure.
Well, Bane, yeah,
breaks his back.
Bane wears him down though. He breaks all the inmates out of Arkham, and he waits and lets Batman capture them one by one. And even during all that, he's not able to capture the most dangerous ones like Two-Face and Joker. He gets the lower level guys like Maxie Zeus and Zaz and Firefly and some of the C-team guys, you know. And at the end of it, he's exhausted because he doesn't sleep, he doesn't eat, and
spending all his energy.
Bane's already figured out. Maybe he's cut through some of Batman's own carelessness. Getting back to the manor, to the cave, and that he tracks him in a helicopter and sees that he's heading in a direction where all of these rich people live. And Bane deduces that, well, it can't be this rich guy because he's 85 years old, and it can't be this rich guy because he's way out of shape. So it's like it has to be, Bruce Wayne, and he sees a picture of Bruce and he realizes that face that Bruce Wayne wears is the actual mask, and he knows without having to actually see him in a costume or see evidence of the cave. He just knows that guy, like those eyes, that face, it's steel behind that. He's like, that is definitely the Batman right there.
So I think, yeah, speaking of like that mask that he wears and how he doesn't do the Playboy thing well enough, I definitely miss that aspect of like Bruce Wayne's character. But I think we're going to see that in the future Batman movies, and I think the groundwork they laid about the persona of Bruce Wayne is this recluse that nobody sees, and then when you do see him, he's like, in this ridiculously extravagant sports car, and he gets out and he puts on his shades and just kind of ignores everybody. That's kind of the allure.
Yeah, hopefully he gets a haircut, you hippie.
Well, he's busy being Batman. We're lucky he shaves. We could have had bearded Batman.
That'd be cool. Like Ben Affleck was pretty bearded.
Yeah. Okay, so are the Affleck Batmans worth watching? Or though that whole, whatever the Justice League stuff, is that worth checking out? Because I haven't seen that.
I think they're okay. The first one, I think Batman versus Superman, right?
Mm-hmm.
It gets too convoluted. They have too many different storylines going on between the Batman versus Superman story, the introducing Wonder Woman part into it. They bring in Doomsday, which is like, come on, it's too much going on for that one. Mm-hmm. But it is kind of cool. You do get to see a little bit more of like the way I think the comic book writers envision Batman. He's like he's a little bit older, but he's kind of at the peak of his powers. And there's one, I can't remember if it's in that movie or in the Justice League movie, but there's a scene where he's in a building and there's a bunch of thugs in there, and he's just kicking butt, and it looks super cool because he's kind of swinging around the room with his it's not a grappling hook, but with the one that.
Or no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's League. Okay.
That's Batman v Superman when he's saving Martha.
Okay, yeah. That scene is very cool, and I think he even takes a bullet to the head, and he just keeps going, like it deflects off of his Kevlar cowl.
Yeah, I think.
But I mean, yeah, the movies are. They're okay. I think Ben Affleck is definitely believable as a slightly older Batman, but the stories are just too. There's too busy. There's too much going on.
So there was this whole controversy about this. Everybody's like the Snyder Cut. Release the Snyder Cut because Zack Snyder he directed or worked on a big chunk of one of the movies, but then they fired him and brought Joss Whedon in to finish it up, and people are like, we need to see the Snyder Cut. We don't want to see this one because it's not as good.
Well, his daughter died, right? His daughter died. Okay. So he'd already filmed 90% of the movie. So he stepped away because his daughter died. Okay. And then they hired, was it Jeff Loeb?
Joss Whedon.
It couldn't have been. I thought it was Joss Whedon.
Joss Whedon, yeah.
Okay.
So I think, yeah, it's interesting when they talk about Batman v Superman, because I watched it, and it's not as bad as I think people say it is. I don't think it's good. It's got a lot of messy stuff in there that you just scratch your head and go, well, that they did that. The Martha thing is just just murder on your ears, and like it's just terrible. But when they started talking about that movie, and they're like, oh yeah, we're basing it on The Dark Knight Returns, and I was like, oh cool, so yeah, like a very kind of Batman versus Superman themed thing, and a clashing of ideals. And then it wasn't, and it was really not very well played out. And I was like, man, they could have gone to the source material and like pulled from the Fountainhead directly. But that's one of those things where like you're taking a movie and you're trying to make a modern version of it where everybody's this like sympathetic, relatable, struggling hero, which is fine sometimes. But, you know, what makes Superman the way he is that like Boy Scout mentality of, you know, truth, justice, and the American way, and using that as like a foil would have been much better than like conflicted Superman, I think. But they didn't ask me for my opinion.
And they started out with a really good idea too. I really like how it started, where Batman is angry with Superman for all the damage that he causes to the city fighting Zod.
Yeah.
And the threat that poses, that you have this alien that's the most powerful being on the planet that can do whatever he wants and nobody can really stop him. They should have like pursued that a little bit more, but they just started throwing all these different elements from different aspects of the DC universe into it. It just went off the rails a little bit.
I'll say that's something that like the Batman did really well is nothing was wasted in the movie. Like, it's 3.5 hours. It's a long movie. But like, was it Nate? Was that you or Alexa? And they were like,
no.
Man, I didn't.
Well, Alexa's the one that was complaining, and she's like, it could have been shorter than, you know.
Yeah. But then we asked her later, and we're like, so what would you have trimmed out? And she was like, nah, you couldn't have trimmed anything out.
Yeah, like it was all, there wasn't any like extraneous, just, you know, filler in there. So to go back to that, like you're talking about, like, so you said Batman was angry with Superman, or you were talking about that just now, and I really liked in the second part of it was the second part, yeah, of Dark Knight Returns, where I Googled it, pulled it up so I can read it correctly this time, where he's fighting Superman, and I was like, because you were just talking about how, well, Superman is he's this alien who's super powerful, and he just deflected a nuclear, like an ICBM, and it affected him, like turned him into some weird like zombie Superman who falls to Earth and sucks the life out of all the ground and regenerates as, you know, Superman again. But it was cool to see how Batman actually had like gadgets that could make him almost like a formidable foe for Superman. I mean, it was all, you know, it was all this gadgetry and stuff that he had to use, but that was really cool. And then one other thing, I can't remember if it was Josh or Andy that was talking about, well, you both kind of were, about the Playboy aspect of Bruce Wayne, and that was something, I think it was in Return of the Dark Knight, where like Gordon and his wife go to talk to him they're interviewing him because they're trying to figure out, or Gordon is interviewing him, Jim Gordon. I think he's just trying to account for his whereabouts or something, so they're trying to rule him out. And he's acting like he's all drunk, and he's got some floozy, you know, girl at his side, and he's like drinking champagne, and he offers it to both of them, and they're like, no, thank you. And after they leave, you know, it turns out it was like grape juice, and the girl was a paid, you know, an actor basically to keep up that facade, that Playboy, you know, that careless Playboy facade. I thought that was a nice touch. And Andy, what'd you think about the makeup? Like in the Batman, like it's the only movie where there's actually like proof, you know, that he had the eye makeup on after he takes the mask off.
Well, Keaton clearly wore makeup, but like when he took the mask off, it came off with the mask.
Well, isn't that how all the other ones would be? Like, you never see, like...
I think that's how the other ones
The mask is just off, and there's no eye black anymore. But this one, it's all smeared and, like, sweaty and, whatever.
Again, like, that's the cool thing about this one is it has that gritty, dirty feel to it in every aspect of the movie. I mean, we were just talking about his car. You said it reminded you of the car from, what was it, Deadshot?
Death Proof.
For me, Death Proof. For me, it reminded me of the car from, and I'm a fan of this movie, and though I know a lot of people don't like it, the Thomas Jane Punisher.
Oh, I love that one. I
love that one.
It.
Yeah, it looks like a car that he was like working on himself and threw together himself.
Well, he was, because there's shots of there's shots of that crazy jet engine thing, like all the pieces like laid out in his cave, like before. Like, I think it's the first time or maybe the second time that he's in the cave, and you see like the, like, I don't know, like the timing chain like laid out on the table and like bolts and all that stuff. Yeah,
this is not a world where he's gonna have a bat wing, like a super high tech plane that comes to him via voice activated remote control that he can control with his fingertips or something.
I mean,
probably more like a Batcopter, like an Adam West style.
I love the Batcopter.
It was cool how he just, like, his main transportation was a motorcycle. He was just, like, he wore a helmet and he just looked like a normal, a regular person riding a motorcycle. It wasn't some wacky,
Which was very year one-ish, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of how he gets around in year one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I loved the noir feel. I'm a big fan of film noir in general. And like I love the way that this movie hit a lot of those beats, and I would argue that a lot of times like Blade Runner and the new Blade Runner, which I haven't seen yet, get credited as modern neo-noir films, and the Batman films don't get enough props for that. The Batman and then Batman: The Dark Knight Returns are both neo-noir films. They both deal with like the unrest and the paranoia that we feel today, which is like a hallmark of noir. They're detective stories in a lot of ways. There's a femme fatale, like all these beats that a traditional noir needs to hit. They hit, and kind of in spades. And I don't know. There was a certain aesthetic for this movie that just sucked me in, because it was clearly not like any place I've ever been or seen. But at the same time, all the stuff was familiar, which is kind of difficult to do, I think. Because even like the Batman Begins movies, much as I love them, they just it didn't seem like Gotham to me ever. It was just New York.
Yeah, for me, the Christopher Nolan Gotham's just felt like Chicago, especially The Dark Knight, because I mean that's clearly Chicago right there.
Yes.
Right? But when I agree with what you're saying, because you look at when Batman first started, the golden age of comics was firmly in that noir setting. When it came back to the Batman Michael Keaton version, it was a little more gothic, but it still felt like someplace you'd never seen before. And the animated series had that noir feel where everything was old looking, even though it had some modern technology. But the cars were old, the buildings were old looking.
People wore fedoras,
the blimps in the air and everything. Yeah, it was very cool.
They really hit that in the in those movie adaptations of the animated ones. I mean, they're pulling it like straight from the comics, right? But I definitely always noticed that. I'm like, man, these cars are all like old looking and stuff. But so I think that's always something cool to see.
When you go through the old comics, 40s, 50s. So there's like this period, right? The golden age of Batman, when he was first being introduced, like everything was really great. And then that American Association of Comics, what do you call that? They had to pass a certain grading by like this government agency that would determine whether the comic was too violent for children. Mm-hmm. So it had to be safe for kids, essentially. And so from like 1950 to 1964 or 65, Batman got really goofy and dealt in a lot of sci-fi and extraterrestrial monster type things.
Through the early 80s, it was up until Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns that it was like
even the Joker disappeared for a while because he was considered too violent for the comics. In the 70s, it kind of got back to a darker, grittier Batman with Dennis O'Neil, and then really popularized, like exploded with Frank Miller, like you were saying.
I think the atmosphere of Gotham is in a lot of places, it's not this way for most of the comics. You think about like Marvel specifically, a lot of it happens in New York and Brooklyn and Queens. And even the Superman comics, Metropolis is pretty much still just New York, right? It's like happier New York. But Gotham is its own character. Like the city has a feel that's not like everywhere else. And I think that's kind of reflected, like you were saying, as it started to get a little more, we moved away from the camp and into less sci-fi and super friends, into a little bit more grounded. He is just a guy who works really hard mentality for how Batman operates. Gotham City becomes its own character as a whole. And the city, and that gets illustrated in the No Man's Land series, especially. Like Superman, there's this big earthquake and destroys a lot of it, and the government blows the bridges, so Gotham is its own island for a while, and it's like No Man's Land. And Superman comes and helps get the power plants up and running, because he thinks, well, if in Metropolis that's what we'd want, and then people would pull together and whatnot. And as soon as he gets it up and running, suddenly people are like, well, no, you can only have power if we give it to you, and we're going to keep that electricity from you unless you pay us. And it's instantly a crime thing. And it's just the difference. It highlights really well in that series the difference between Gotham and everywhere else. And I think that the Reeves movie did a good job at showing that this isn't really we wanted it to be that way. Thomas Wayne really wanted to infuse the city with hope and put his money where his mouth was, and was like, yes, here's how invested I am and where we live. Let's do this. And everybody else was just or we could just steal it. And that's the mentality of the city. And there's little pockets of people who are trying to strive for what's right, whereas other places it's small pockets of people who are criminals.
Yeah, the No Man's Land goes to show you how the government feels about Gotham. Like any other city, they would have sent in the National Guard to try to get things restored and order and things like that. But for Gotham, they're just we never really liked Gotham anyway. Let's just blow the bridges and let them figure it out. And to make things worse, Batman is MIA for the beginning portion of that after the earthquake. And so you have Batgirl shows up to try and help sort things out. And it's not Barbara Gordon. She's Oracle at this point. It's the other girl whose name slips me at the moment.
Isn't Cassandra Cain?
It's very cool. No, that's Batwoman.
Huntress becomes Batgirl for a while.
Yeah, but the Batgirl that I'm thinking of, she's mute.
Cassandra Cain.
Okay, maybe. Okay, I'll take your word for it. But it becomes kind of like this almost like a Grand Theft Auto or Cosa Nostra thing where you have all these criminal elements fighting over portions of the city. You've got Penguin and his gang. You've got Two-Face and his gang. Joker's kind of running wild doing his own thing. The novel version of No Man's Land is really good too. There's a novel adaptation that's worth checking out. Especially, I thought the relationship between Sarah Essen and Jim Gordon is pretty interesting. And then also Batman can't really rely on high-tech gadgets because he doesn't really have access to a lot of it, right? He's got this utility belt that's more like a a tool belt, and he's got all this. He's carrying all this stuff around with him. Yeah, it's pretty neat. Pretty neat take on his resourcefulness.
Yes.
The thing with Essen was a shocking thing to me. Gordon having that tryst or fling or whatever with his pregnant wife at home. That was an interesting.
I mean, everybody's flawed in some way, right?
Well, and I thought that you're exactly right, and that's. I mean, it's I guess kind of tragic, but at the same time, it shows that he is a flawed guy as well. But he did the right thing, in that story. I guess he broke up with Essen and stuck it out and talked about going to counseling and all that. That was an interesting.
In that story, he does. In year one, he does.
Oh, there's other. So, is that other one you were talking about?
Continue reading for more.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we get to talking. There's so many things like I want to bring up, and so one thing that I think I read somewhere that somebody noticed there was that in the movie when they arrest, in the new movie when they arrest the Riddler, it kind of reminded them of. One of the Arkham video games, like the beginning of, which I have it on my Xbox, and I started playing it, and I got through that part because it's right at the very beginning. But it's like the cops go into this diner, and then basically that's like the beginning of like Gotham just goes to hell. Like everybody in the diner is murdered, and gosh, I don't know which one is that. Which Arkham game that is. But it was cool.
It's been forever since I played those.
I still haven't even opened the third one. It's still wrapped in plastic. It's just sitting there waiting for me to get to it one of these days. I remember the first one though. Man, I spent a lot of time on Arkham Asylum, and then the second one was Arkham City.
Okay.
And the third one was. What was the third one called, man?
Well, they had.
Can't even remember.
Okay, Asylum, City Origins, Night. Okay, and then there's Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. That's coming out next year, according to Wikipedia. I think it must have been Arkham Knight, the one I was talking about, at the beginning where, like, some cop walks into the diner and then. Everybody just dies inside the diner somehow. Something happens.
So anyway, I started blasting.
Yeah, so I just started blasting. All right, so we've been going. Let's see, we've been talking for a little bit over an hour. Do we want to? Is now the time? Do we want to say? I was thinking maybe you guys go with like each of you. Like, what's your top? Like maybe a top 5, like Batman. I guess comics like storyline. Is that what you call it? Like a storyline? Like.
Yeah, I was kind of wanting to talk about this too, and we have to just before we even start throw out Dark Knight Returns, Year One, and Killing Joke because I think that's universally held as like the top 3 in any particular order.
So we just have to understand that those are always going to be at the top, and this is.
I think for most
we're
people,
digging a little bit
in the top 5 or top 3.
A little bit deeper here, which is good because I want to get some more of that substance. So I don't know. Do you guys want to like each? I'm putting you on the spot, I guess. Like, do you want to like each like give like start at like number 5 and go? I don't know. This is a lot of pressure.
Are we talking only comic books?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess. What would give you the most solid like foundation, like the best experience to like begin a journey, into this world.
All right, cool. So I collected a lot of the comic books and the graphic novels pretty intensely for like a 12 or 15 year period, like the early 2000s, like basically right around the time I left Lincoln. until, I don't know, maybe shortly after I got married, I guess, because then I started having to do more grown-up stuff. So I've got, like, I'm not quite as caught up on stuff that happens, like, after 2010 or 12, we'll say. But between, like, I was really big into the portion of the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. So if we're taking out the three that I already mentioned, and obviously we've talked about The Long Halloween, that is pretty good. And it has a sequel called Dark Victory. And I think there's even a prequel called Haunted Night. It's either a prequel or a sequel. But that whole Long Halloween, the Jeff Loeb take on Batman is you can't go wrong with those. And Dark Victory introduces Robin and kind of like how he gets introduced into the mythos and his origin and all that kind of stuff. So that's a really good one. There's a really good Joker origin story called The Man Who Laughs. Have you read that one, Josh?
A very long time, but I think I have. That's one that I recognize. That, yeah.
I got the cover here. It's pretty creepy.
Yeah, it is creepy.
Yeah, it's really good though. Yeah, it's great, and the relationship between them, and the reason why he does the things he does, it kind of goes into that a little bit. So really like that one. I love, obviously, Nightfall. That was one of my earlier experiences with Batman.
Wait. So,
and there's
so is Man Who Laughs? Is that one of the ones on your list?
I put that in my personal top 5, and I'm sure a lot of people will kind of scoff at that.
Yeah.
It's just a fun read. Like you'll be into it from beginning to end.
So Man Who Laughs, Nightfall.
Yeah. Nightfall obviously super great, and it comes in like a 3 graphic novel set, and they're all like. Do I have one of them over here? Possibly, maybe. Yeah, here's the first one. And you can see it's fairly thick, and there's 3 of them.
Okay.
But the first part is basically how Bane wears down Batman and breaks his back.
Okay.
The second part is when Jean-Paul Valley takes over as Batman and kind of starts going off the deep end. And the third part is Bruce Wayne trying to recover the mantle. He's already kind of figured out who he is or where he belongs in this whole thing. So his comeback is a cool story. What else? We talked about Hush a little bit, but Hush is really great because it's got one of the great artists, Jim Lee, who his art is just fantastic. He actually did the art for the Monopoly set back there.
Oh, I was just noticing that.
I've had that set since like my brother actually gave me my first one back in 2006, and like a fool, I took it with me on my deployment to Iraq, and we beat the crap out of it out there. Just so many nights playing this game. It was awesome. It didn't survive that deployment, so when I got back, I found another copy of it, or another box, and ordered it, and I just left it in plastic. I haven't opened it.
So you totally...
And my kids are
You totally just lost the original one that you had?
I mean, it just got so worn out because it was getting used almost every day, and we were working 12 on, 12 off shifts, so that and being out in the desert and everything, and the sand, and it just didn't make it back. I was like, nah, I'm not gonna bring it back.
Your kids are bugging you to open this one?
Oh, they're dying to open it, and they're dying to open my other little figures back there too. They're like, Daddy, come on! I'm like, no,
kids,
I've had those forever.
So, do you get a third one so the kids can play it, or do they?
Well, you can't. It's not available.
Really?
You have to find it on eBay or something, and I don't know what it goes for these days, but I'd imagine it's got to be
curious now. Okay. So you've got 3. You've got Man Who Laughs, Nightfall, and Hush.
Yeah. What else? Under the Hood is pretty good. That was one of the last newer ones that I read before.
Is that Under the Red
kind
Hood?
Of falling out of. Yeah, it's kind of the story of it's this guy that he's a vigilante, but he's killing the crooks that he's taking out, and he's very familiar with Batman's fighting style, and he knows how to cut his lines that nobody else can cut. It seems to like just be a step ahead of him, and it kind of works his way out to figuring out that the Red Hood is Jason Todd, who was the second Robin, who was killed by the Joker, I think in Iran or something, chasing down these terrorists that he believed killed his mother. And at the end of the tunnel is the Joker. He's selling nuclear weapons to the Iranian National Guard or something.
Wow.
And Batman tells him to hang tight, not to go after him alone. And Jason is very rebellious and doesn't listen. And it's actually the story of how he dies. It was up to the fans. DC Comics did a thing where you could call this number.
What?
And if you called the one number, he would live. And if you called the other number, he would die.
Oh, wow.
And the fans, I guess, didn't care for Jason too much, so they offed him.
Wow. That's really cool. I mean, I learned so much tonight. I wouldn't...
Oh, that story blows your mind the first time you read it.
I didn't think
cool.
Joker, I didn't know he was like an international arms dealer. I figured he was just a Gotham-centered dude.
He's been a lot of things, I think. And again, it's just kind of like he serves the story primarily,
Okay.
which
All
is
right.
great.
Okay, so you got one more. So, number one.
Number one, let me think. I'm going to try something a little different. I'm not going to say it's my number one other than the top three or number one in this top five, but it's very cool to check out. And it's kind of like, I don't know if you would consider it an Elseworlds or an Otherworlds, but there's a series where he is taking on, I think Dracula comes to Gotham or something.
Yes.
Awesome.
And ends up biting him.
Yes.
It's very, very cool because he dies and he gets reborn as a vampire, and I think he's got to find a cure. It's been years since I've read it. I have it. I have a copy of it. I just haven't read it in a long time.
That sounds awesome.
Oh, and my other one that would probably be number 4 on everybody's top 4 or top 5 that I didn't mention was Arkham Asylum. It came out in 1989, and it is very dark, very adult. It's not for kids. It's very gritty.
Okay.
And then this is just an honorable mention. I thought this one was pretty cool. This is a very dark take on the Joker, too. It came out right around the time that The Dark Knight came out. And Joker's on the loose again. And the part that I cannot get out of my head, and I haven't read this book in quite a long time either, but there's a part in the story where he breaks into this apartment of this elderly couple, and you see them like sit up in their bed. They're startled because the Joker has just walked into their room, and he's holding like a switchblade or something. And like the next scene you see of them, they're just completely like stabbed and gutted, and just
Now,
he massacres those 2 old people.
is that the one where it's from the perspective of the henchman? Like
the henchman?
Okay, so there was my friend John at work had told me about, and he specifically about that with the elderly couple. He brought that up and recommended that to me, and I know he also recommended Killing Joke to me. So
Reminds me of a Criminal Minds episode that has Tim Curry in it, where he does that and he breaks into this house and there's like an elderly couple there, and he's of course Tim Curry's the serial killer, which I bring up because not only the similarity, but Tim Curry was going to be the original voice of the Joker in Batman the Animated Series. And then he had something fall through, and then it went to Mark Hamill. So somewhere there's like test footage of Tim Curry as the Joker in that show. So I love that there's that like kind of connection where like, so now when I watch that episode, I'm going to be like, well, I could kind of see him with the...
all right. Okay. That's cool. All right, so what's the name of that vampire Dracula Batman?
I think it's... I have to go downstairs and grab it. Let me see if I can... If you just Google Batman Dracula comic series, yeah.
Batman Dracula.
And the art is pretty cool too in that series.
Well, there's Batman Dracula, which is a 1964 fan film.
No.
And then the Batman vs. Dracula, 2005 direct-to-video animated superhero
No,
film.
it's the comic book, Batman Dracula comic book. Yeah, Elseworlds. Yeah, I think they do consider it an Elseworlds. By Doug Moench. But he's got very exaggerated. He's like very muscular, very ripped, and he's got these very exaggerated ears on his cowl.
Okay, so
I remember that one.
Is it? Oh, I see. Yeah, they're really tall.
Yeah.
Batman and Dracula, Red Rain.
Red Rain, there it is.
Elseworlds.
Yeah, Red Rain. I think that's it.
Red Rain.
Red Rain.
Okay. Well, okay. So Batman and Dracula. That is just hearing those two together is just awesome. So lots of material here.
I mean, feel free to just come by sometime. Take a week, take a weekend. I got a whole library of Batman comics. I've got like 3 boxes of Batman graphic novels, and there's another series that's really interesting too. That I have. It's called Prodigal, and it takes place after Nightfall, and it's kind of the story. Bruce Wayne takes some time off from being Batman after taking the mantle over again from Azrael. What's his name?
Jean-Paul Valley.
Jean-Paul Valley. Thanks, Josh. So he takes off for a while, and he leaves Dick Grayson, who has felt he's kind of betrayed almost in a sense that Batman didn't choose him over Jean-Paul Valley to take over for him while he recovers from his broken back. And so this series kind of goes into Dick's, because now Dick is taking over for Batman while Batman is taking some time off from being Batman, and it's kind of going into how he's dealing with being Batman in essence for the first time. He's never done it before. So that's kind of a cool little story on its own. I don't know if they made a graphic novel out of it, but I went and tracked down all the individual comic books to find out how the story read out.
I think I've definitely got some overlap, I think, then with Andy, because I think Nightfall was one of my earliest introductions, and I want to say I read the novel, which is just great. Like, it's so fun. But so Nightfall, No Man's Land, either the novelization, or if you really want to commit, you can read the comic arc. That's like 10 omnibuses. They're big boys.
Yeah, I got those too.
Yeah, those are really great. I sold those to a friend, and now I'm like, it's actually Brian. I should message him and be like, I want those back.
Have you read those? Have you touched those since I sold them to you?
Yeah, no. Well, it's funny because I went to. I'm friends with his. In addition to having a friend, I'm also like very good friends with his parents. So I was at their house, and they were like, "Oh, do you want to see Brian's room? Like, he just left a bunch of stuff here. And, like, you got to see this." And I was like, "All right," and I did, and I went in, and he's got like. She was showing it to me because he's very detail oriented, and his DVD collection is alphabetized, or his disc collection. It's not just DVD. Anyway, so yeah, No Man's Land and Nightfall are probably some of my top ones. Court of Owls is really good. It's very conspiracy heavy, detective oriented.
I like it.
It's a lot of fun. The one that I remember liking a lot, but I'm weak on the details, is Batman Black and White. Had a lot to do with Two-Face. The whole comic is written in black, is illustrated in black and white. But I just remember that the Two-Face arc in that is really good. And then one that I think is only a book that I picked up. I thought I had a copy. I was going to grab it off the shelf, but I couldn't find it. It's called Ultimate Evil, I believe. And it's a pseudo-grounded in reality book, but basically Batman takes on like a child trafficking ring. And discovers.
They made a comic. There is a comic for that too.
Is there? I think. Yeah, I read that book, and one of the things that I loved about it is the way that Batman is portrayed is like a gold standard. Like, if Batman tells you, like, I'm gonna let you go or whatever, you can take that to the bank. That's like, it's a promise. Like the Batman, like they say this periodically throughout the book, like the Batman's word is gold. He says it happens, and nobody even questions it. And it's like a kind of, I don't know if there's a follow-up to that style of writing, but like I would love to have that thing where he just like says something ridiculous and fantastical, and everybody just goes, okay, yeah, Batman's word is gold, okay. And like and like he just like stops something in its track because he says, don't do that, or I'm gonna do this if you do that. And they're like, yeah, okay, we're done. Those are my 3 favorite. And just as far as like storylines go, Nate, I've recommended it a lot. You gotta watch Batman Mask of the Phantasm.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that up. I was waiting to
the number 1 Batman movie, period. It doesn't get included because it's not live action, but it did have a theatrical release. Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill, and it goes to show that you don't need a really long movie to tell a good story that both covers like a present day Batman and also like maybe a more rich origin story than we get in any other movie. Because all the other movies are like, his parents are killed in front of him and he's sad and he then gets angry and violent. Yeah, I mean, oversimplification. And I feel like that doesn't apply to this one. So I think that's 100% where I would like recommend.
Yeah, it's like that whole thing with his parents. I mean, I understand, that's the story, but it's like every different iteration or different version of it that you see, when that comes up, I'm almost kind of like, yep, okay, parents die, how are they gonna like stylize it here where the blood is pooling around, and then he looks into the blood and then sees his reflection, and suddenly we're back in the present time with Batman. I don't know.
That's what was so interesting about this new movie, is that you find out that Thomas Wayne isn't the perfect guy that we all really thought he was.
That was
as well.
So is that whole thing with? So his mom her family is Arkham.
That
is that a canon?
That part was new for me.
So that's not a canon. I hadn't read that before. That's okay. Or
no,
maybe
the part where he's operating.
That's in the comics somewhere, because like when I saw that, I was like, I can't believe they're doing this. Like that's such a wild twist. But I remember, for the life of me, I cannot remember where it's from. But I remember reading that, and it's one of those more obscure kind of what'd you call it, Elseworlds. But yeah, there's a thing where like it's her family's the Arkhams and the Waynes, and they kind of come together, and then she has like a history of potential.
Okay, and that just further ties the whole Arkham Batman thing. Just enriches the whole storyline. That's cool. What were you gonna say, Andy? Sorry.
The part where he Thomas Wayne operates on, is it Falcone?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, is that from Long Halloween, or is that from Hush? I can't remember now. It's from one of those two. So that part was canon for sure, but the whole part with Martha and her mental illness and tied into Arkham's, that I hadn't read that before. I thought that was really cool to see that in the movie. Yeah. And especially the part that Thomas Wayne hires somebody to take care of the reporter.
Yeah.
He asks
the fear of God.
He asks Falcone to. Yeah.
When that
very cool,
didn't work.
Very cool twist that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah. Okay. I know we're just going a long time period here. What did you think of the Falcone in this one? Because for me, like Batman Begins, kind of like those characters still kind of stick with me as like foundational, just kind of like standard characters. So it was interesting to see someone new, playing Falcone, because the one in Batman Begins I thought did a really good job. So I can't remember the name of the actor, but
yeah, I mean, I like this guy because I've seen him in other mafia. I think he was in Sopranos or something. He had a bit in that, and maybe in another.
I can't remember if you. Yeah.
I know I've seen him in stuff before.
Is it John Turturro?
Mafia stuff.
Is it John Turturro? Is that who it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was in a movie called man, what was that called? Like She Hate Me, as a mob guy. Terrible movie. Like, don't even bother. It's not like bad enough to be on your like terrible movies list, Nate, but it's bad enough to not watch it.
Okay.
Anyway, he's like quoting The Godfather to some guy, and anyway, his part in that is very good. I liked him personally. I liked him as Falcone. I thought that was, or Falcone. He's gotten a lot of hate, but I thought he was
really. People
great.
Didn't like him.
Yeah, people didn't like him. That's one of the major complaints that I hear about the movie. Is they're like, they should have got somebody else. And I was like, nah,
I thought he was. I thought he did fine. I think he was good.
He's greasy enough to be like a believable bad guy, but like clean enough to be a guy where like he could get away with stuff for a long time, and people could definitely be like, no, he's just like a nice guy.
Oh, isn't he? Is he the Big Lebowski? Was he the Jesus in the Big Lebowski?
Yeah, and he was the butler in Mr. Deeds. Sneaky.
You know, we haven't even brought up was how unrecognizable Colin Farrell was.
I was just thinking that. I was gonna say like that was awesome. Like, what?
I mean, he looked more like it looked like Robert De Niro to me in makeup when I first saw it.
Like, okay,
I had no idea it was Colin Farrell in there.
So when the movie first started, like, because I had heard that he was in it, but I didn't know, like, what part he was. And so when it first started, and we saw the police commissioner, like the first one, like right after they discover the mayor is murdered, I was like, Josh, is that Colin Farrell? He looked, he's in a fat suit. He's got this weird accent. And Josh was like, I don't know, I don't think so. And then we finally see the penguin, and we're like, oh yeah, that's him. Okay. So, yeah, that was great. I thought he did a good job. That was fun.
His voice was different too, like, because I feel like he always has like, you recognize him because of his voice a little bit. Like, he's got that look for sure, but when I heard it, I was like, man, I was questioning it the whole time until the end of the movie. I was like, was that really him?
Well, and he's like, what is he, like, Irish or something? Is he?
Yeah. He's Irish, yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
I definitely like that take better than the DeVito, like, very weird half-bird kid that's abandoned by his parents in the sewers.
Eating, like, raw fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was... Yeah.
So I saw that one in the theater when I was, like... When it first came out, so I was only, like, 5 or 6. And
oh my God.
5-year-old.
Oh,
it was
man.
Yeah, my mom was mortified.
She's like,
mortified.
Taking you to this.
Yeah, and now watching it, I'm like,
because I mean,
not bad.
Because but it is really dark when you think about the penguin. You think about Catwoman, like basically killing Max. What's his name with the electrocution?
Christopher Walken.
Zapper thing.
Can't remember his character name.
Yeah. That was a pretty dark movie, and the first one I think as a little kid, like the first time I saw it actually kind of creeped me out quite a bit.
Paul Rubens and his wife killing their kid, like trying to. Like they put him in the cage and like throw him over a bridge, and that's the Penguin's villain origin story.
I was pretty young, I think, when I saw those movies too, and I was too young. Like the age I was when I saw them, I'm like, I wouldn't let my kid watch it at that age. I can't remember.
That movie was I think it was so unpopular with parents for little kids that because the McDonald's originally introduced the toys for the Happy Meals, and they ended up pulling the toys.
Yep.
Because the movie was too intense for little kids. And that's why they got so silly in '95 with Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones with Batman Forever.
So the merchandising tie-in, okay, and the kids and everything.
And actually, like that's when that was a pretty silly movie, but I actually have fond memories of that one because I was old enough to buy my own copy of the VHS when it came out, and I remember trying to skip school that day, the next day to be able to watch it. But I saw that movie I wore that tape.
Batman
out.
Forever.
Yeah, Val Kilmer.
That one was...
Who actually wasn't bad.
That one.
Val Kilmer
was good. Because you had Nicole Kidman was the like therapist or whatever, right? Like
Femme Fatale. Yeah.
Was she? Yeah.
Was that? Who was the villain in that one?
It was Jim Carrey.
That was Jim Carrey. Okay, yeah. That was good.
And that's when you had Chris O'Donnell was introduced as Robin too.
Or as Robin.
Yeah.
He was a pretty solid Robin. Like, I liked him. I still liked him. Like him. I think.
Yeah, I thought he was good. He was a little old for me. I felt like they should. I mean, if they went younger, though, it'd be like, is this really realistic or not?
Well, if they went younger, then it'd be like, well, child endangerment. Like, don't encourage our kids to do that. But then, like, he's at this awkward age where, like, technically he should just be on his own, but that's fine. Let's have Bruce adopt him.
It's symbolic.
Yeah. I think that's what the Nolan movies missed in some ways. And what I kind of hope, if the Matt Reeves and the Rob Pattinson continues long enough, I think they have to bring in a Robin at some point.
Well, okay, so in the Nolan ones, don't they kind of hint at that with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, where they're like, oh, is he going to be Robin, or is he going to become Batman, you know?
They do, but it's more kind of tongue-in-cheek, where it's like a nod to the Robin arc and the idea that somebody could take over the mantle of Batman.
Well, then, of course, they don't continue it, so it's just like, who knows? I mean, they could do whatever,
yeah.
So.
I wouldn't mind another Nolan movie with Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Batman. That'd be fine.
That'd be sweet.
I feel like with this new one, though, because we're talking about how gritty and realistic and all that kind of thing that it felt, if you bring a Robin in, I think it's going to take away from that, especially if they're bringing, because they made the Riddler a serial killer in this movie. So if you have a serial killer in the next movie that's even worse than the Riddler was in this one, and then you bring a Robin into it, I mean, I don't feel like it works in live action like it does in the comics or like it does in the animation.
Yeah.
You look at the animated Robins, especially the one they use now, Damian Wayne. He's actually Bruce's son through Ra's al Ghul's daughter, Talia al Ghul. So this Damian Wayne has been raised by the League of Assassins. His grandfather is Ra's al Ghul, and he's 10 years old, and he's a little pint-sized dude, but he is kick-ass. Like he beats up Nightwing in one of the story arcs. So it works in that sense, because if you saw a 10-year-old taking on a 30-year-old Nightwing in live action, you'd be like, this is ridiculous. Like, this doesn't work at all.
Well, I don't think he has to be 10 though. I think the concept of fatherhood is kind of essential to Batman's character arc in general, and the growth that brings when you become a father in some way. I'm not saying that we need to see a 10-year-old out there like right. What was that movie with Nicolas Cage?
And they could do it like
Kick-Ass.
They could do it like Tim Drake, like the way Batman used Tim Drake in Nightfall, where he's mostly in the cave. He's flicking stuff up from on the computer. He's wearing the costume, but he's not taking him out on the street with him to track down Joker or to take on Banner.
Right. Yeah, and like
an Oracle type.
He could acquire a ward when he's young, and that way he suddenly has this responsibility to balance with what he's doing. And then later on, then we could get teenage. I think a 15-year-old, although still not like super realistic, but again, we're talking about a guy who somehow has perfectly bulletproof armor that lets him keep moving. Like, I mean, that is kind of unrealistic.
By taking a 12 gauge blast of the chest, which would knock your
that would, I mean, yeah,
break some ribs probably.
I think if you're that well protected, then we're less worried about the physical damage to a 15-year-old, 16, 17.
I guess that's going to be the interesting thing to see what direction they decide to go in. If they want to bring in a Robin when he's still fairly early in his career, or if they want him to kind of figure out how to be Batman, like how to fearlessly jump off a building and not be like, oh, when he first realizes how high up he is when he's trying to get out of the police station, you know?
Yeah.
Are they going to try and get him? Are they going to try and make him figure out how to be Bruce Wayne the way that we know Bruce Wayne before he tries to figure out how to be a dad?
Yeah. Like I said, down the road, if it continues long enough, I kind of don't think it'll continue that far, but I think the idea of mentorship at minimum, if not full like adoption and parenthood, but I think the idea of mentorship, I think, is kind of what continues the arc in a I don't know, in a good way.
Well, it sounds like they're gonna do at least one more movie. Those guys.
I don't see how they could not. I mean,
super successful.
Yeah, they've got to do a trilogy. This is printing money.
Yeah, right. I mean, did I see something that this like on HBO? Like this was like a huge, like one of the biggest releases on HBO.
I believe it.
And even the box office take was pretty respectable. Like it was up there.
Yeah, I mean, if you do a Batman movie, even just marginally well, I mean, like you said, it's printing money. I mean, people are going to flock to it. So, and the fact this one was done super well, I mean, it's just, yeah, I agree. I think they're going to have to at least do a trilogy. So, well, I mean, we could talk for hours on this. So another we could have you on again, Andy. We could talk Sopranos because Josh has been going through it.
It's been slow, but like semi-steady.
I'm probably gonna just have to watch it again, while waiting for you to finish.
That's fair.
Well, but you haven't watched the movie because you're waiting to watch the whole, or did you watch the movie? Josh, you didn't watch the movie?
No, yeah. I haven't watched it.
Okay.
No. If I do, it'll be after I finish it.
Yeah. I get you.
Because we watched Sopranos. Did we finish that earlier this year? Or was it late last year that we got through it?
It was
because I think you eventually overtook me because I had started rewatching it.
Yeah, I did,
and I brought it up to you, and then you burned through it faster than I was able to.
It was last year, yeah. Because the movie, yeah.
It's been like 5 or 6 months since I finished watching it, and I already feel like I have to watch it again because even though it was my second time, it was my first time since watching it through its original run, like back through the late 90s and early 2000s. And there's a lot that happens and a lot of characters.
Yeah, like
a lot of storylines.
I'm on Reddit a lot, and because I sit in front of a computer all day, and there's a Sopranos subreddit, and it's like all the stuff that's on there now. It's like I barely like recognize, the quotes they're throwing out there. I'm like, man, what was that? I'm like, I'm gonna have to watch it again because I need to refresh.
Have you checked out any of the podcasts? There's 2 really good ones with the girl that plays Adriana, and then the one with Michael Imperioli and Uncle Bobby. What's his name? Bobby Pesca. What's his name? Bobby. Gosh, now I can't even remember his last name in the show.
They call him.
But you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Uncle Bobby, Janice's husband. Yeah, in the last.
Is it Steven Sherpa? Is that the actor's name? Might be. Bacala. That's not his actual last name.
Bacala.
That's what they call him.
Yeah, but in the show it's
Bobby Bacala. Yeah. Before we go on another tangent, we should probably just for now. Tomorrow's Monday. Gotta work and stuff. This has been a very good time. Andy, thank you for coming on. It's a long time coming. Glad we finally had you on. Had a good discussion. And we hope to have you on again to talk about, I guess, whatever. I mean, any of the things we mentioned tonight, or things that we haven't mentioned.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It was definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, no problem.
Never get to talk Batman stuff with other, people that know a lot about it. Batman.
Well, and we could just make it a recurring thing where we just talk more Batman.
Maybe after Nate watches Mask of the Phantasm.
Sure.
Then we can.
Okay. Josh?
Oh, and there's another, real quick, I'm sorry, there's one other crossover that they do with Batman. It's not on the HBO Max, but you can rent it on Amazon. It's Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it is hilarious.
Oh my god.
I think I have that on disc, actually. It's great.
Yeah, I ended up buying it. It's really good. It's so funny.
Josh, I think you were telling me about that at some point.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've written down a bunch of this stuff, and obviously we have it recorded too. So, Josh, anything else you want to add before we finish up?
No, you guys want to give a final rating on the movie? I mean, you've seen it twice. We've talked about it.
What's our scale?
Yeah, whatever.
I give it.
How many batarangs out of 5?
I give it 5. I'll give it 5.
You get 5 out of 5. You could do out of whatever too. Like you don't have to stick to 5.
I'll give it 4.5. 4.5 batarangs. I really enjoyed it. There were a couple things, but it was really solid. It was really solid.
Yeah.
I really liked the focus on the detective side of him. So. Just a little too moody. He was a little too moody for me.
Yeah.
A little too emo for me.
I was talking to my brother about it, and he was like, he told me, he goes, 7 out of 10, and that's generous. I think the Riddler was too whiny. And I was like, I don't know. Isn't that like the modern day villain though? Like you whine into the internet until you get a following. I thought that was the most realistic part of the movie, actually. I'm gonna go and say 9 out of 10 for me.
Nice.
I think it's not a perfect movie, but it's not even a perfect Batman movie, but it's pretty up there for me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
It was good.
And with that, I think we should end with a stirring rendition of Ave Maria.
All right. Okay. Well, listeners, you can check us out at all the different places online. The Open Eclectic, Facebook, MySpace, Twitter, Instagram, Ko-Fi, and that's it. So until next time, look for the bat symbol.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
That's right.
He beat me to it.
Signing off.
Thank you so much for listening. You can find The Open Eclectic on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and MySpace. Want us to ramble on about something specific or have a comment on what you just heard? Send us an email at theopeneclectic@gmail.com. We now have a Ko-Fi if you feel like supporting the show. That's ko-fi.com/theopeneclectic. Or support the show by leaving us a review. Thanks. We hope you'll join us again next time on The Open Eclectic.